Hello everyone, I'm Laura Paquette, and today I'm breaking down Upon a Burning Throne by Ashcock K. Banker. Normally when I'm preparing for one of these, I have a pencil and paper and I'm writing down all the good stuff, all the highlights. This book was like one whole highlight reel. It was amazing. And it overall, the most important lesson, I think, although there's so many, was that you have to tell the story in your own way. Because when you're reading within any genre, some more than others, mystery, romance, which I talked about last week, you know how they're gonna end. The lovers are gonna be together forever, or the mystery's gonna be solved. In fantasy, speculative fiction, there's gonna be a huge war. The good guys are probably gonna win, but fantasy, one of the things I like about fantasy is that you're not as sure as with romance and mystery. But with this book in particular, it is based on the Marbata, so you know how it's gonna end. However, it is just so well told. Everything from the world building to the characterization and just the way he tells the story, he makes it his. And it's like no one else could write this book in this way, even though it's a book based off another book. But it's just so well done. And what distinguishes any book, I think, based off this really, is is the characters and how the story is told through the narration of those characters. And this book in particular, he's creates an epic scale by using tons of characters with very short chapters. And so the book is very fast paced, even though the chapters are long. It's a long book, or excuse me, not the chapters. The paragraphs are long. The book is long, but it feels very quick because of the chapters going by so quickly and with so many different people. It creates this sense of sweeping vastness. And when you write an epic, when you're writing about demigods and demons walking the earth around mortals, you have to have people do great things, and you have to have a lot of people. But you know, so the great deeds, that's pretty easy. Everyone, that's why we're reading fantasy, is to have this huge thing that could never happen here. But you need a baseline, and he does that. He has enough normal people to show what life is like for everything from like cobras and vultures and crows to these crazily powered people. And not only are these people different in levels of power, but they're different in personality and goals. So if you were to have just a whole bunch of people writing these chapters, but they all kind of felt similar, it wouldn't have the same sense of vastness, because it would just be like the same person with different names. He's done this work to create so many different people in this world that even though there's a lot of characters who are not central, they're are not central to the plot. They're central to the world because they are the world. It's just very well done, very highly recommended. Uh, the it sold me from the very first line, which is something that's talked about, but it's very hard to do. The very first line: "They came to watch the children burn." That's awesome. I mean, how can you read that and not want to continue? But so with the intro hook, one of the things that you're normally taught is to start with the main character. Like I talked about earlier, the main character is typically what's going to set the book apart, so you want to put the most important things up front. So it's definitely a risk for him, for Banker, when he starts with this interesting scenario. It's probably a good 15. It felt longer than it was, but it's a good 6 or 7 pages until you come up against a named person that's going to have any importance later on. And so for the first part of the book, it's not about a character. It's about the scenario, and it's this crowd almost. He personifies the crowd. Maybe you could get by in your own work, personifying maybe a landscape or a technology, but he goes with the people here, and which goes a long way to personifying the world and doing that world building because just like the main character is going to be the selling point of the novel, the people making up your empire are are the selling points of that nation, that world. So with the intro hook, the interesting scenario, fascinating first line, and then almost all the highlights from then on are break down into two major categories, and that's world building and characterization. And the first thing for world building I'm going to talk about is interior mirrors, or there was some other name for it, but it's one of the best tricks I learned in college. It's basically you take a physical space and you use it to represent a character. This can be done sort of as a one-to-one. You do it once, you kind of show who they are, that establishes them, or it could be kind of like a running thing, and so as their physical world changes around them, that it's a reflection of them. Um, this is also a good way to show kind of like hidden depths. If you have a character that's always appeared a certain way, that especially a more guarded or stoic character, and then you come into their space and you see they're not entirely what they seem. And you don't have to say a word, they don't have to reveal anything, but you as a reader know, or you as the writer are showing, that there's another side of them. Another thing with world building that it's right up at the front is using just universal sameness to show the differences in your world building in sort of a sympathetic way. So back to the children burning at the beginning, because who doesn't want to? Oh, never mind. I don't want to get sued. But so he's talking about all the crowd coming out, and they're acting, they're gossiping, they're kind of scared because these are like royal kids. They don't want to seem too eager to watch them burn, even though, they are. And all these things that would just, resonate across time and space. And while he's talking about all these things that anyone would do so that it's very easy for you as a reader to connect with, he's also talking about things like class or caste that are specific to his world and that would otherwise seem, very, very foreign to most modern day readers. So, with that, when you're talking about world building, especially with customs and history, you have to explain it once. Especially when I was younger, I wanted to kind of just, you can infer it. The character already knows it, so they're not going to think about it. Okay, you can use your willing suspension of disbelief and just have the people explain either in their narration or dialogue just once what's going on, because there are some things that you can pick up by context, words, individual words, something like gurus, chakras, you can figure that out. But a whole custom or a whole history, there's no way you can figure that out. So just explain it once, and then if you're gonna explain it again, make it different either by contrast, or you've got to really sell it again as an emphasis, particularly with how it's affecting what is going on right now. A character's decision, a something like a trial or a duel, something that is going to reverberate for the rest of the novel. Um, if you're writing a series, then in the next book, probably people will have forgotten by then, so you can just write it again. But for the most part, when you're writing something like customs or history, you do have to explain it, but you only have to explain it once, unless you're going to use it for contrast or emphasis later on. Next, with characterization, is let characters fully live in the world, and part of this is just choosing specific. I'm not even gonna bother with that word. Choosing details rather than being more vague. So, have them eat, I don't know, goat and pears instead of meat and fruit. It's the same amount of space, same amount of words. I've talked about it before, It's really important showing the world, just your specific world instead of any generic world. And with characters living in this world or living in their world, this this means that when you go into their headspace and you're becoming more abstract because they're thinking, you have to keep their thoughts along whatever trails they would take based off their own time, their own culture, their own personal experience. Their choices are always going to be informed by the world. And especially when they're doing something that we don't like, it's really easy to marvelize it. You know, you say one thing and then you instantly undercut it. But no, if you undercut it like that, if you say one thing and then instantly apologize for your characters, one, it's kind of just a breach of the world. Two, it's kind of insulting to your reader. I mean, the reader can figure out, like I can figure out when I read this book. When I read this book, there's some questionable consent going on. So, but it's very obvious with the narrative that this is not how it should be. But the narrator, maybe he comes out once. It's 600 pages. He has a lot of words to use, but he doesn't say, you know, in modern day America we wouldn't do this or whatever. It's he very much shows, in the way he writes, the words he uses, he describes a situation and he shows that this is not how it should be. But he does it from within that world's context, not ours. Because, you know, if you think about it, there's lots of reasons to do such and such good things, and not all of them are from our own context. There's other reasons that we aren't aware of, and when he's talking about these decisions, these choices that are made better or worse, he uses their framework, and by doing so, it just keeps the writing flowing. It fills out the world. It just makes the characters seem so much more believable. And with that, the characters should make choices informed by their backstory. It's not just the world, because the world is way different for everyone. You have the Dowager Empress, who grew up a fisher caste, and then she kind of like seduced the king, and so she's a dowager queen. She's also a fisherwoman, and or was anyhow, and so she's not just this platonic ideal of a queen. She's this grown up fisher girl, you know, and so, and not only that, what she was as, you know, just Census Bureau data, but her weird relationship with her grandsons, her awkward relationship with her daughter-in-laws, her relationship with her son, who was kind of like a demigod. All of this is just particular to her, and we see she makes decisions different than anyone else in her position, and some of them are just stupid. I just want to, if you were a real person, Jelana, you need help. But because we see why she's doing what she's doing, and because we see her in so many different contexts, you can't help rooting for her. Like, if she was real, I would hate her. She would be awful. But she's just so well fleshed out, and because she's understandable, because she's realistic, because she loves the main characters, you know, you can't help but root for her. I think that one of the most important things he does, I've said that a lot, it's just a really good book, is that he shows characters being sympathetically wrong. And it seems nowadays we have two conflicting ideas. We want conflict. You need conflict. There has to be conflict in a story. But yet we don't want our characters to be wrong. I'm sorry, but there's no single person who doesn't cause their own problems at some point in time. And so having characters be wrong and yet still be sympathetic is something that, you know, you just need to learn. And there's a few ways he does this. One is this sort of innocent guilt. It's two characters are out hunting. They're drunk. You should not hunt when you're drunk. Okay, they're at fault. They're stupid. But they go out, they hunt, and they shoot a deer. except for the deer turns into a guru, a person, as soon as the arrow hits him. So now you've just gone and murdered a person, not only a person, but a person who's going to curse you for the rest of time. Good job. And they're at fault. They were hunting while they're drunk. There's no reason to do that. He was an educated man, Shavat. He knew better. Mila grew up as a warrior. She knew better. But yet, the punishment, it doesn't feel fair, right? They did bad, okay? But they're still sympathetic because they had no idea they're being punished as murderers without actually having committed murder. I mean, kind of. It's like manslaughter, but just this innocent guilt, for lack of a better thing, acting one way, causing these bad things, and being responsible, but not being responsible to the extent in which you're punished. Um, Another way he shows characters being sympathetic, even though they're making really bad things, is like I said, Jelana, the Dowager Queen, because she's done so many bad things, but so many different contexts. You can't help but understand her in a way that she should be in prison for the rest of her life. But you don't want that because one, there's way worse people, but also that there's still things that she's gonna do that are good. She's still gonna do good in the world. But a final thing is when you have a character do something morally, dubious, you can't then just turn around and say, but they were a good person anyway. Or just have other characters come alongside them and say, it's okay, buddy, you're great. You're the most moral guy around. Like, no, clearly you're not. You just shot a man because you were drunk. So, I think with this book in particular, he goes the other way, and he has Shabbat the hunter say, I deserve worse. I had this grievous punishment, but this isn't enough. And he accepts what he's done, and not only that, but he holds himself to a higher standard, and in doing so, in being so distraught and not letting himself off the hook, but saying, I'm a prince. That makes it worse than if anyone else had done it, which, okay, it's a little classist, but again, in their context, he's right. It makes him so much more sympathetic because he doesn't let himself off the hook. And I don't know, that's just very well done. Something to whatever, words are hard today. But so lastly, this is kind of between world building and characterization, is show us how people live. And this isn't, oh no, my alarm went off, I brushed my teeth type of thing, but especially when you're talking about a dystopia or an ancient world or someplace where it's hard to survive, showing some aspects of the daily life helps flesh them out. And this isn't just we're going to find some food, kids, but showing what they have to do to get it, with what tools and what environments, what food do they actually get, but most importantly of all is how do they overcome these challenges, and is it different from random person, silhouette, blank slate person that would do it in their place. So how do these people react? How do Shavat and Mela react when they're sent off in exile, or willingly go off into exile? And it's not long. There's probably only maybe 10 sentences in 600 pages showing how their life is different now, but it gives a very good idea in a very short space of time how these characters have evolved and who they've become over a couple years. So I could go on for this book. I could go on about this book for a while, clearly, but I'm struggling with my words right now. So that's it for today. I'll be better next week. If you like him, whatever, go away.